The sirens shattered the morning stillness by the lake, louder and more jarring than any alarm clock could ever dream of. You know, the kind of sound that crawls under your skin before your brain even registers what's happening? That was me, standing barefoot on my own driveway, suds still dripping from my hands, when the first cop car rolled up, and then another, lights splashing blue and red across the water, drawing out every neighbor in a 10-house radius. Some were peeking from behind curtains, others just standing in their bathrobes, arms crossed like they were at the world's strangest block party. And dead center in the chaos was Linda Carter, my next-door neighbor and self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, pointing at me like she'd just caught a bank robber red-handed. All this over a doorbell. I'm not even kidding. A $40 smart doorbell, stuck onto my front porch with more hope than skill, and suddenly I'm public enemy number one in Lake Haven. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about property lines or paint colors. This was a war, and I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. When I bought that little cabin, I honestly thought I'd finally cracked the code. 35, fresh out of a divorce that felt like it lasted a decade, nerves still twitching from the stress of splitting everything right down to the damn salad forks, and all I wanted was peace. 2 acres under a cathedral of old oak trees, a dock that caught the sunrise just right, turns the water molten gold if you're up early enough, and absolute, beautiful silence. No more apartment neighbors stomping upstairs. No one telling me how to live my life. The real estate agent practically sang me a lullaby. This property predated the HOA. No dues, no meetings, no neighbors policing what color I painted my shutters. For the first time in years, I could actually breathe, stretch out, watch the world wake up with a mug of coffee. No drama, no noise. I got maybe 2 weeks of that peace. Then one morning, I'm halfway through putting up a smart doorbell. Yeah. Maybe I was feeling a little fancy, wanted to know if the raccoons were still stealing my packages, when here comes Linda Carter, marching across my yard like she's got an appointment with destiny. Picture it. Navy suit sharp enough to slice cheese, folder clutched tight like a sword, and a blonde bob that somehow never moved in the wind. She stops right in front of me, jabs a finger at my doorbell, and barks. That comes down now. Not a please, not a good morning, just straight to the point, like I'm some stubborn child she's dealing with. I blinked, half expecting this was a prank, you know? Like, there's no way she's serious. Ma'am, this is my property. I'm not in your HOA, I told her. She just curled her lip and said, around here, everyone complies. You've got 48 hours. Then she started waving around photos, snapshots of fences chopped down, paint jobs undone, cameras yanked off walls like trophies from her personal campaign. She even leaned in so close I could smell the perfume caked on her collar, hissed, "You'll regret it, Mr. Miller." And for a second, I actually wondered if maybe I'd bitten off more than I could chew. Let me back up a sec. Linda wasn't just the HOA president. She was a force of nature. She had that look in her eye, the one that says, I get what I want every time. And in Lake Haven, she usually did. But come on, a doorbell? I almost convinced myself she was bluffing. I went back to mowing my lawn, washed my Honda Civic, did all the normal things, figuring the storm would blow over. It didn't. 3 days later, I'm out front when 2 cops roll up. Linda's right behind them, waving her cursed folder like she's conducting an orchestra, telling the officers my cameras were illegally surveilling neighborhood children. She talked like she was their boss, rattling off statutes and codes that sounded real enough to make my stomach drop. Neighbors gathered, whispering, eyes darting between me and Linda like we were putting on a show. I stood there, sweating bullets, wondering, had I missed something in the paperwork? Was there some hidden rule that gave her this kind of power? The idea of losing my cabin, the only piece of solid ground I'd managed to grab after my marriage fell apart, made my knees weak. Part of me wanted to rip the thing down right then and there. I thought, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm just being stubborn. But then I remembered my dad, hard-nosed, land-smart, spent half his life buying and defending property, always double-checking the fine print. Your land is your freedom, he used to say. I could almost hear him laughing in the back of my head, telling me not to back down. So, I pulled out my deed and handed it to the officers, hands only shaking a little. Thank you very much. They checked the county records right there in the driveway. Sure enough, I was clean. Not a single clause tying me to the HOA. They turned to Linda and said, plain as day, you have no authority here. You'd think that would have been the end of it. But Linda? She went off like a bottle rocket, demanding a supervisor, ranting about community values, while the cops barely kept a straight face. One of them even warned her about misusing 911 for personal squabbles. The look she shot me, cold, vengeful, like she was engraving my name on her hit list, let me know this was just round one. That's when I realized, if I wanted peace, I was going to have to earn it. So, I started digging. Took a day off work, drove down to the county courthouse, and planted myself in front of a mountain of dusty records. For hours later, I had enough dirt to fill a wheelbarrow. Incomplete signatures, mismatched boundary maps, a bankrupt developer whose paperwork was a mess. Lake Haven's HOA was built on a foundation of pure sand. But the real gold? I found it in a box from my late dad's estate, buried under old fishing licenses and baseball cards. A deed, not just for my plot, but for 5 acres along the lake, including the land the HOA's precious clubhouse sat on. My father's name, plain as day, never transferred. My family owned their headquarters. For 15 years, they'd been trespassing on Miller land. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by boxes, laughing and crying all at once. Suddenly, I wasn't the outsider. I was the landlord. But this wasn't just about legal documents and land surveys anymore. It was about people. So I started talking to my neighbors, piecing together Linda's reign. There was Bob, a retired electrician, who told me how his mother got hounded out for parking her Buick the wrong way. Carol, a single mom, who'd been fined thousands for having ceramic gnomes in her garden. Janet, the treasurer, whispered about all the shady budget moves, legal fees that nobody voted for, payments that disappeared. One by one, they opened up, and every story painted the same picture. Linda ran Lake Haven with an iron fist and a stack of threats. You'd think I had the upper hand by now, right? Not quite. Linda went into overdrive. She plastered my door with fake violation notices, claimed I was destabilizing community harmony, spread rumors that I was planning some giant commercial development to ruin the lake. She sent her loyalists. Yeah, she had actual loyalists, to follow me to the diner, spy on my conversations, even organized a petition against me. It was like living in a bad Cold War movie, except instead of the KGB, it was the world's angriest PDA mom. There were nights I'd sit on my dock, staring at the black water, wondering if it was worth it. If maybe packing up and leaving would be easier. The loneliness, the anxiety, the constant feeling of being watched. It wore me down. But every time I wanted to quit, I'd pull out that deed, my dad's name, my family's legacy, and the fire came back. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for every neighbor she'd ever steamrolled, every family she'd ever bullied. So, I called for a public board meeting. Linda accepted, grinning like she'd finally get to watch me squirm. She packed the clubhouse, my clubhouse, as it turned out, with residents, had her slideshow ready, supporters in every row, the works. The air was thick enough to choke on. I walked in, carrying boxes of evidence, a surveyor's report, and a lawyer who specialized in HOA law. My hands shook, but my voice didn't. I started laying out the timeline, every bogus fine, every false police report, every time she'd twisted the rules to punish someone who didn't fall in line. And then the neighbors started standing up, Bob telling his mom's story, his voice raw with anger, Carol talking about crying over stupid fines, Janet finally admitting the books had been cooked for years. Even Michelle, the secretary who once spied for Linda, stood up and said she'd been threatened if she didn't fall in line. The whole room changed. The faces that used to glare at me with suspicion now glared at her, and you could see Linda start to panic. Then I dropped the bomb, my dad's deed, the survey maps, proof that the clubhouse was built on land that never belonged to the HOA. 15 years of trespassing, 15 years of illegal meetings, parties, and votes, all on Miller land. The silence was so thick you could hear the air conditioning humming. Linda's face just crumpled, denial, rage, fear, all flickering in her eyes like a broken neon sign. She screamed that the deed was fake, demanded more surveys, accused me of fraud. But her own lawyer checked the records and nodded. It's real. And then, right there, desperate and cornered, she let slip the secret that changed everything. Your father promised me this land would always be for the community, she shouted. The whole room gasped. Suddenly it all clicked. This wasn't about rules or standards. It was personal. She'd had some secret history with my dad, a broken promise, and she'd turned it into a vendetta against my family for over a decade. In less than 5 minutes, the board stripped her of every scrap of authority. But the real twist? Without legal standing, the HOA had no right to the clubhouse. If they wanted to keep using it, they'd have to lease it from me, at market rate, triple what they'd been paying, and every cent of it going to the Miller family. And Linda? She had to sign the lease herself, hands shaking, eyes down, all that swagger drained out of her. I watched her scribble her name, shoulders slumped. The woman who once called the cops on me over a doorbell, now paying me rent. Poetic, right? You'd think I'd feel triumphant. But honestly, it was something different, deeper than pride. It was justice. Real, hard-won justice. As I left that meeting, documents tucked under my arm, neighbors whispering and patting my back, I realized I'd done more than just win a fight. I'd reclaimed my own life, and maybe even given this community a shot at something better. But hey, justice isn't always neat, and people don't always change overnight. There are still scars, still old grudges simmering under the surface, and every time I see Linda drop that rent check in my mailbox, I know this story isn't quite finished. It never is with people like her. So, let me ask you, was I right to stand my ground, or should I have let it go for the sake of peace? Does justice mean fighting every battle, or knowing when to walk away? I want to hear your take, your stories, your HOA nightmares. Because let's be real, we all know a Linda somewhere. Drop your thoughts below, tell me where you stand. And if you ever find yourself facing down a bully with a clipboard, remember, sometimes the only way to win is to dig in your heels and fight back. You know what I mean?